Hi, and welcome to Teaching Tip Tuesday, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning at UWSP. As many of you recognize, our students aren't just intellectual beings. They're humans. And they are humans who, because of their developmental trajectories, are experiencing a lot of changes and juggling a lot of balls. In the eye of the hurricane that is young adulthood, part of the course climate that affects student learning involves and interacts with students' social and intellectual development. That's why this week I thought I'd review with you the Chickering model of student development and discuss how mindfulness of broad patterns of student development can help you approach classroom climate in a productive way to create an inclusive environment that promotes student learning. In 1969, Chickering described 7 vectors of student development. Each of these represents a dimension in which students change greatly during their college years. These vectors all interact. The first vector has to do with growth in intellectual, physical, and interpersonal competence. Some of the intellectual competencies that students develop during college are study skills and increasingly nuanced critical thinking and problem solving. Physical competence is associated with the realization that mom and dad are no longer responsible for a student's health and well-being, and so students are in the process of learning how to take care of themselves, including aspects of nutrition, hygiene, and health. Interpersonal competence grows as students develop communication, group, and leadership skills. As students develop these competencies, they develop a sense of self-efficacy and confidence that they can deal with challenges. In your teaching, you should realize that your students are just developing competence, and it's unlikely that any two are at the same level of both ability and competence. You can make your classroom climate more inclusive and foster development of competence through choices you make in your teaching. First, for intellectual competence, provide scaffolded critical thinking and problem-solving opportunities. The scaffolding is essential for those who are less competent to work in their zone of proximal development to gain competence. Physical competence isn't something you're likely to teach unless you're in a wellness-related course, but you can provide opportunities for mindfulness and stress reduction, like breathing exercises, as part of a long class to help normalize self-care. You may also want to keep your eye out for warning signs that students are not taking care of themselves appropriately, like extreme weight loss or gain, or decreasing personal cleanliness. Report students of concern to the Dean of Students webpage. Finally, you can mitigate differences in social competence by providing guidance on roles, responsibilities, and expectations for group work. This guidance should include practice on conflict management. During college, students develop a sense of purpose, which involves nurturing specific interests and committing to a profession or lifestyle, in spite of the opinions of others. Because of different levels of development among students, it's useful to provide goal-setting activities to help those whose planning and purpose are out of joint. You can also provide information in your courses on how the learning in the course is related to various careers. Providing opportunities to explore diverse careers through engagement in service learning or undergraduate research can help students to better recognize what they want to do and what they enjoy doing. Finally, remember at all times that you can mentor students, providing guidance and advice about what is entailed in entering specific career paths. The juvenile sense of integrity is largely a reflection of what our caregivers teach us, but as students gain in knowledge and experience, they develop their own internally consistent set of values that guide and direct their behavior. As an instructor, you can enhance development of integrity by focusing on ethics in education and academic integrity. You should outline not just what behaviors are correct or good, incorrect or bad, but also why the bad is bad, and why the good is good. Make it clear to students why specific behaviors and values are important to them in reaching their goals, to you, the instructor, to their classmates, to the university, and to potential future employers. If you have a chance, you can highlight specific examples of integrity or professional ethics as part of teaching by using case studies or guest lecturers. Developing adult relationships, including romantic and sexual relationships, involves a lot of interpersonal skills, abilities to delay gratification and to make sacrifices, and to manage emotions. As students progress through college and mature, their relationships also mature. You can facilitate this. By highlighting diversity and inclusion, celebrating differences, you can help students to outgrow their reluctance to interact with those who are different from them. By helping students to build community in the classroom through discussions and group work, you can get students to find common ground with those who are different from them and build relationships. You may also want to use some form of group work, but because students have different social proficiencies, remember to include guidelines and conflict resolution. During childhood, we're largely dependent on adults who are caregivers. According to Chickering's model, during college, students separate from their parents or caregivers, developing personal autonomy and eventually balancing autonomy with collaboration and support from peers. You can help facilitate the transition to autonomy by including some self-directed learning exercises in which students decide for themselves what they want to study. Examples include research papers and presentations. You can help them develop a balance with collaboration by including some group work, peer reviews, or jigsaw discussions in which students work independently to learn something, then share their knowledge with others. Adolescents are notoriously bad at hiding what they feel. Their emotions are on the surface, and they can change in a moment. Part of the maturation that occurs during the college years is that individuals begin to really recognize their emotions, such as anxiety, happiness, anger, frustration, and excitement, and learn to express them appropriately. In other words, our emotions become more controlled. The classroom climate can either make this transition easier or more difficult, which impairs learning. As an instructor, it's important that you provide a supportive environment in which students feel comfortable sharing their emotions. You can help students to better recognize the emotions being expressed in classroom discussions by naming them. Words like, "It sounds like that makes you feel frustrated," or "You seem to be saddened by that," are great ways to facilitate the exploration of feelings and emotions. If you're teaching about something that's likely to produce an emotional response in your students, like genocide or evolution, providing an appropriate way for students to process their feelings, like reflecting on their learning and how it makes them feel, and why they think they feel that way, is a productive way to help students learn emotional management. It's also important to normalize counseling and wellness programs and to refer students to them if they seem to be having emotional difficulties. Finally, the establishment of identity. Personal identity is very complex and includes multiple intersecting components. College students are just developing their sense of self, and as such, they may don many different selves as part of their exploration. How they relate to the world around them, how they relate to their physical appearance, their heritage, and their sexual orientation may change dramatically in the college years. Students with a well-developed sense of self are comfortable in engaging with diverse ideas that conflict with their own and are not particularly threatened by challenges to their worldview. As students are undergoing this process, it's important that you, as an instructor, provide a positive course climate for students of all identities. Some of the ways you can do this are to accept the identity that students present without judgment. Don't invalidate emotions or feelings or values. If students are offended by something, whether you find it reasonable or not, it's important to recognize that for them, their feelings are both real and salient. Remember that representation matters. For students to feel belonging, they need to see something of themselves reflected in a course. So, including different voices, identities, and points of view is useful. Using narratives to tell stories can be particularly effective. So, if you also include projects that foster awareness of diverse beliefs, values, and ideas, providing sources of exploration for their developing sense of self, you can help students as they develop. Remember, learning is the product of the interaction between student development and the environment. You can facilitate student learning by recognizing the developmental challenges that they're juggling and providing a safe climate in which to explore. And that's this week's teaching tip, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning here at UWSP. Remember, at CITL we offer support for course design, learning activities, assessment, and pedagogy. Visit our website to schedule a consultation today.